I'm about to start the recording. Should I do a quick intro? Yeah.
If you want to, I
Yeah.
can also just do it myself. Whatever you want, man. Go for it.
Once it starts. So, okay, now we're good to go. Welcome everyone. Oh, we have somebody who's joining. Awesome. Welcome everyone to the crowd that is here live, and welcome to everyone who's going to listen to this later on. To our last call of the expert series on the governance section. A really sort of partly complicated section that people tend to struggle with certain questions from time to time. And so really happy to announce today's speaker, Rating Pepe. He has been working for a big fund in this space for quite a long time, has been working as an analyst, if I'm correct, I think 5 years plus. You correct me if I'm wrong here. And was one of the first raters. So one of the OGs, so to say, in prime rating, has been around since the start. And is our one and only master, grandmaster even, rater that we have at prime rating as of today. So really exciting to have this call and this last webinar today. I will hope you guys gonna enjoy it. And without further ado, handing over to Rating Pepe for this last talk.
Yeah, thank you for that intro, and also looking forward to discuss this talk, since the topic that we're going to talk about, governance. I think that governance is one of the perhaps most overrated aspects when it comes to like innovation in the current time frame of crypto, but it's like the most underrated in how much people actually look into it. So from my perspective with governance right now is that with blockchain, we have really cool new innovations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have also immediately solved the human governance challenge. And we do have all of these dApps that have governance live, and all of them do it in different ways and with different levels of decentralization, different levels of power sharing. And that is something that we are going to explore today. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Cool. I now see that I can't see the chat at the same time while this is in full screen mode. So if there is a question, maybe Manyang or Lavi, just give me a heads up. I'm willing to do questions also during. I think this can be quite interactive if we want to. So today we have an hour to talk about this. I think the talk itself will be a bit shorter than that, but we will have plenty of time for questions at the end or during. And well, as it says, please stay mute unless you're speaking. But if there is a question, you can interrupt me. I have no problem with that at all, since I can't see the chat directly. Then what we're going to go through today is first, of course, a small introduction on this Rating Pepe that is talking to you right now. Then we're going to go over the multiple questions that are in the report, and immediately looking at best practices and examples straight away. I think that will help with the learning process today. And then we will do some tips and tricks and end with some example reports, and then the Q&A if there are any questions. So here is a huge disclaimer that all of you can read later on. I will share these slides immediately after the call in the Discord. So yeah, who am I? I am a Rating Pepe, and my background way before the whole crypto experience and journey used to be teaching and organizing meetups, and that's where I think still my drive to explain things comes from. But within Web3, I've been working as a researcher since 2016. I've worked with multiple DAOs and still do, and I'm also still an advisor to a crypto fund where I used to be the head of research. So that also brings more of my experience in crypto research. And currently within Prime, I am the only grandmaster. And that comes from all my early ratings and the reviews that I've done later on. I've been around since quite the beginning, and I've been one of the people also writing the first templates of ratings. Now, for today, as I already mentioned, governance, I think it's not solved yet. And what we should keep in mind is that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is really a model to live by when it comes to governance in crypto. And why? I would say the reason there is that well, at least I hope that we are working towards a more permissionless, more trustless, and therefore probably a decentralized, because that seems to work in those areas, future. But if we don't get it right from the start, if we don't start with the right structures in place, and if there is room for corruption, then probably it will corrupt all the way down. So we have to be really critical from the start with these kind of things. And yeah, there are a lot of projects out there that claim a lot or that promise a lot, but we as raters should be very, very critical. Now, what are we going to go through? We have 5 different questions within the rating report that are related to governance. And as you can see, the first one is admin keys and also has the most points that can be scored. I'm going to spend most of the talk on this first question for a number of reasons, which we will go into in a bit. Then we also go into what governance can do. Now, you might think like, well, the capabilities of the admin keys, isn't that the same? But no, I would argue it definitely is not, and I will explain when we get there. Then we're going to look into who is actually contributing to governance, what kind of infrastructure is there, and the processes that are in place or not in place. That is also, of course, possible. So to start off with the admin keys, why are we even going to talk about admin keys? Why am I always in the Discord telling people that they should be more clear and more critical and more in-depth when it comes to admin keys? Well, this quote, I think, from Bankless helps. And it says, admin key risk is the risk that the original deployers of a smart contract hold the admin keys to the contract, and thus aren't trustless, because it fills John Adler's rule number 2, no one else can access your money. We in crypto like to pride ourselves that everyone has their own bank in their pocket now. And well, that comes with a lot of responsibility, but also with a lot of power. And you don't want to trust other people, otherwise we go back to old TradFi, and that's exactly what we're trying to get away from. So, okay, we're talking about admin keys that hold a contract and might be able to get to your money. So what are admin keys? Prepare. We're going to have a wall of text, but I think it's really important to get this right. The private key that holds control over a smart contract. So people out there, you're probably familiar with having private keys with your own wallet. Now, these private keys, they also exist with smart contracts. And these smart contracts contain funds of users of the particular dApp. So maybe you're putting money into a liquidity pool or in a staking contract. And blockchains, they have the beauty of decentralization and self-control funds. However, dApps are created by smart contracts, which are deployed by a developer or a team. It's not the same as a blockchain. And this contract has been deployed with one private key as controller. This potentially takes away a lot of the trustlessness of the blockchain technology. And some projects, therefore, hand over or give over the keys to the community, or they create a multi-sig wallet, thereby sharing the responsibility with the keys and elect well-known community members to hold these keys. Some other projects burn the keys, so no one will ever be able to update this contract ever again. But that also means that if they have a V2 or V3 of their protocol, they would have to deploy new contracts to which users then can choose to migrate, which is awesome. I mean, I would like to say, again, this is also the whole idea about forks within blockchain technologies, that people have to choose the choice to agree with new updates. Having an admin key gives risks to what are called rug pulls, where a team member can take away all the funds out of the smart contract and disappear. Now, you might think that this is all a bit extreme and that we don't have to be this paranoid. Like, why would a team of adapt choose to do malicious things with their smart contract? Aren't they all trying to build cool stuff? Well, I mean, a lot of them do, and I do believe that most people in the course in their core are positive and nice. I think most people are not out there to let the world burn, but not all. Some people out there are there to try to steal your money. For instance, here you can see RockDoc, which is a really cool project that also does research, not like Prime Rating, but in a different way. They are doing research into, well, new liquidity farms. And here they had an announcement of Tom Finance of a couple of weeks ago, where they had in their smart contract, they had code basically where they would be able to take out all the users' funds with their admin key. So this is something real that can happen, and it's something we have to be very careful with as users. Besides literally stealing your stuff, there is also something new lately happening, and that is admin keys being compromised. So this comes from Rect News, where in 10 days, 4 cases happened. In total, 415 million in funds were stolen by multiple projects that said that their admin key got compromised. Basically, that someone got into their computer and found their admin keys, which means that they had, well, their admin keys in a hot wallet or online. I mean, it's really bad. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. Bad practices of these projects. And it also raises the question if that was really the case, or if these projects have exit scammed or rugged and now are saying, yeah, our keys got compromised. So you basically don't want this to be possible in the first place. And that's why we at Prime Rating are really looking into this. Like, what can these admin keys do? And to give a little bit more of a background. So here we have SushiSwap, which I think most of us are very well known with. And here they had a multisig, which needed 3 signatures. And they said there were 4 people on the multisig. And then DeFi Watch found out in the Etherscan, on Etherscan in their contract, that there were 7 signers listed. So that meant there were 3 people that we had no idea of that were able to actually make complete changes to SushiSwap. And the whole community would not know who did that. So always have these kind of things as transparent as possible from a user perspective, because otherwise you just don't know what you're trusting, and we want these things to be trustless. With all that said, let's look at the actual question. So the admin key.
Pepe, there's a question in the chat.
Oh, please, let me go out of this mode and let me see what the question is. I will say it out loud. So the question is, I've seen many projects say they are early stage and therefore need to be centralized to build fast and keep admin key control inside the core team, like metaverse and NFT games. How to balance this against the admin key argument you make? Yeah, so that's a very good question. And later on, I make the argument that you should not trust any of this. Like, I understand the argument, but what I can say as a researcher in the space who've seen projects say we will decentralize over time is that most of them never do. And if they do, it takes years, because when will they feel that it is the time? And this is what I say, like, power tends to corrupt. They have the power to do it themselves, and they are the team, so they feel like they should be the one making the decisions. And therefore, if they have the power to just keep that, they will probably never change. So for the question, at least, never rate a protocol for promises, is what I can say. And for you personally to look at these things, I think you need to do a full character judgment if you want to give projects the benefit of doubt. But be very, very skeptical with these kind of promises. And I also think that there are projects out there that do go decentralized or DAO first, and they still are able to innovate and to do cool stuff. So yeah, I don't buy it. All right, let's continue. So the options that we have here are admin key operated by a single developer or no information on admin keys. Now, before we go further, I have a question here, and that is basically, what about projects that have no admin keys? That is also possible. What if there are no admin keys at all, and it's immutable and non-upgradable? So this is from a report that I did quite some time ago, where I also say this question assumes the existence of admin keys in the first place. And although there are some that were used for deploying in this particular project, Liquidity, the team stresses it has no control whatsoever. So what they did is they deployed, but all the contracts are immutable and it's not possible to upgrade them. And I think that is actually really cool and maybe the way going forward even. I am not 100% on this yet, and it's up for everyone out there listening to make up their own mind. But perhaps governance is flawed when humans have to decide together on this, and perhaps the power of smart contracts and decentralized code is that you just deploy something and people are able to look at it, to the code, and if they like the code, then they can use it, and otherwise they can go do their own stuff. Instead of having these smart contracts that are able to be upgraded anytime, and who knows what will happen, and you constantly have to be aware of what might have changed. So here I make the case for the highest score possible, since they have no admin key and they are very clear on what was possible and what won't be possible. So if there are no admin keys at all, that might be actually good. Now, I will say some projects, they claim they have no admin key, but maybe you should ask, like, how about the treasury funds, or how about upgradability? Usually what I do is I ask, are you able to upgrade the contracts? And if they say yes, then there are admin keys. That's kind of how it is. Now let's go back to the scorings. So here you have one, like a single developer or no information on admin keys. An example here is Trisolaris, which is a new DEX on the Mir blockchain, where you can see they have shared the contracts, and you also see there's a staking contract with a master chef. And well, I know that master chefs always have admin keys, and in this case there is just no other explanation at all. Of course, we could at least use the contract in Etherscan to check it further, and I would say if you are that deep into it, you will be an amazing raider, because being able to look into the smart contracts on Etherscan is almost like a superpower. But for most people looking into the docs of Trisolaris, they don't have a lot to go on here. So I would say that this is one of the lower scores that they would get. Then the next one is admin keys operated by the team with sufficient time available to react. And this is an interesting question here, So some of the people out there have seen this and thought, if there is no time lock, that means that the team can be very quick in reacting to any problems. But that's not the way I would interpret this at all. You want users to have time to react. If a team decides to make changes to the smart contract, users must have time to decide if they want to keep their money in there or not. And that's why you want to have a time lock, so that a team cannot suddenly overnight change the whole rules without the whole community having time to react on it at all. So remember, promises do not count. As we can see here, this is once again SushiSwap. They have a 48-hour time lock, and you're like, wow, that's 2 days. That's amazing. But DeFi Watch noticed that the time lock was owned by the multisig itself. So the multisig was able to remove the time lock. What? So there you have a time lock, but there's no point, because they could remove the time lock and then just do it without. He pointed this out, and then they were like, oh yeah, you're right, this is indeed bad. So they announced quite publicly that they would change this. And then he checked on it a bit later again, and they never changed it at all. So they promised it publicly that they would change this, and they didn't. So promises do not count. Don't score on promises. Then, after that, we have admin keys operated by a multisig with credible and staked individuals. As you can see over here, these are the admin keys of Balancer. And the signers are explained, including also where these signers come from. And as you can see, you have a whole bunch of, well, a very diverse set of signers of a lot of different projects. And you might even recognize a couple names like Kane Warwick or Mariano Conti or David Hoffman. I would say that is a very credible multisig that you're looking at right now. Here you have ShibaSwap, which says, trusted members of the community. There must be 3 out of 5 signatures. And then you have a couple of names that I've never heard of and that seem to be pseudonyms. So yeah, no explanation why these people are chosen or where they're from. Of course, you do have, I mean, I assume that these are Twitter handles, so you could dive deeper into it. But if you see this as a raider, you should do the extra mile and look into it, because right now this is not enough information to say that this is like a credible multisig. Then here we have an example by Matt J on Element Finance that goes quite deep into what the admin key can do, what it can't do, and who are on the multisig, and also it says what details it doesn't have. The only thing that I'm missing here, you might think, are sources, but actually he annotated it. So he even gave sources to it. So what I expect to see in an answer on the admin keys is, first of all, is there an admin key, or are all contracts immutable? Then what are the admin keys capable of? Who is in charge of the admin keys? Is there a time lock in place? So that's actually quite some knowledge that you should be sharing here. Then as a bonus, which I think with admin keys, I would definitely say go the extra mile. I could argue that this might be the most important question of the whole rating, although perhaps the very first question of the rating is sometimes underestimated as well, because the very first one goes into the value proposition, which of course is very important as well. Now, a bonus could be clear explanation on each different admin key within the protocol. Like I said, it could be that there is an admin key for the funds, and there could be an admin key for like the treasury funds, and another one for the actual pools or staking contracts. Then examples of admin key usage by the protocol in the past. So promises is something we don't want to put any ratings on, but past, however, is very interesting because it shows us how these people have acted. And I guess the SushiSwap examples are one of those. And some background info on the multi-sig signers. If they give some names, look into these names and see what else they've been up to. You could also use the Do Your Own Research wiki for that, because a lot of these well-known people are also explained there. That is the admin key section. Perhaps I'm going to give a short moment to see if there are any questions on the admin key section. I do see a big lol. I'm so sad that I can't see the chat at the same time because I have no idea on which one it was. But there were a couple things that I shared here that could get a big lol, yeah, probably around SushiSwap. Let's continue, because there were no questions. All right, the next one is extent of governance capabilities. So why do I think this is different? Well, governance is not always the same as the admin keys. It can be that a team has admin keys and has certain powers, but that they don't necessarily give that to the people who vote. And that's, I guess, what this question is mostly about, is what is possible to be done and to be changed within the protocol, and who has a say over that. Basically, who has a say over these admin keys or over the development. And we have a couple of options here, like it range from only a signal to influencing almost all operations. Now, the first one, I have an example once again to show you. The governance of abracadabra money happens through a snapshot page that can be found here. Once a proposal is passed, the team will consider it and implement it. Now, I kind of even like how brazen they are with this, that they will consider it. Because if we are honest, most protocols right now are in that stage where the team considers snapshot votes, because people can vote on something and that they want something to happen, but in the end, the team, they are the builders. They are the ones who can actually build it out. So in the end, they always consider it. But here they were very, very honest about it. So I would say it only functions as a signal when it comes to abracadabra, and many other protocols as well. But there are some that have some influence on operations. Like here, this is again Balancer, where it really explains the multi-sig powers, which can be voted upon within Snapshot. And it also says what it does not have power on: custody over funds from the liquidity, which I would say is one of the most important ones. So here you have a couple of things that are able to be changed, but I would say people vote on it and then the multi-sig will enact on it, but that's still people that will then do that, and they could choose not to. Then there is also governance influence multiple operations of the protocol directly. Now that is, of course, way more interesting, and there are not that many protocols that do this. One example that I know of is Kyber, where people have a on-chain voting system, not like Snapshot, which is off-chain. And when Kyber holders, KNC holders, vote, they can directly change, for instance, fees or where the fees go towards. It has like different options going to the treasury or stakers, etc. And that will happen directly. So they change the smart contract after a vote on chain, which is really cool, but almost never happens. And actually, they're going to move away from this model because on-chain voting is so expensive and they want to get more interaction. So they're going to move to Snapshot. So it's difficult. Yeah. And then you have nearly all operations of the protocol are being influenced. Well, that barely ever happens. But if you find one, I would say they definitely go the extra mile, and that would be amazing. So here we have, again, an example of a report that really goes deep into it. This is from Santosh and Maniak, and it explains a whole bunch of things. So what do we want to see in there? Are governance votes binding? That is what I was just talking about. And what do they vote on? So what are the options for them to vote on. And then the bonuses, because I think those two are the most important. Examples of votes in the past, examples of actually implementing said votes, and who does the implementing. Are there certain requirements to participate in voting? For instance, here in this example at the bottom, they say that you need 1K keep tokens to create a vote. And they also say that only certain people can submit proposals, and therefore and only multi-sig members can vote. Keeps power to a select few. So they don't only tell what is possible with governance, but they also point out what isn't and why it could be done better, which I always like. Then we go to the next question, and that is active governance contributors. Now, this one is again, and I guess that's just my whole point why I'm so critical on governance. It's not perfect, and it's definitely all being experimented on. And for instance, here, like a lot of the reviews that I see, they say not that many people are active. And that is just the sad truth today. And perhaps, therefore, not having governance might be the way to go forward and just deploy code. And if a team comes up with new cool stuff, then yeah, deploy new. So here the options are a small group of active or almost no debate, or an active group. And basically what I want to see there is a voting turnout data. So look at the snapshot page or whatever voting platform they use and see how much of the tokens that are out there that are able to vote have voted, and see if that is a decent amount or not, and give a description of forum activity, which I think is also really important to look at. So yeah, they might have a forum, but who is doing things there? How long ago or how often are proposals being made, and who are actually interacting with these proposals? And that comes to the next one, is the diversity of the participants. Sometimes you just see the same 3 people over and over and over again, and maybe they are just the team members, and maybe only 3 wills are voting, and maybe the wills are the team members. Then yeah, why do you even have governance in the first place is something that you could ask yourself. Bonuses are the analysis of voting behavior. So maybe there's a huge turnout, but also look into if it's always a unanimous vote, or if there is actually contentious votes happening. If so, that would be super interesting. That is really a sign of an active community. And comparative research. So you can look at the size of a protocol and the size of the users, and see, because that's a question earlier on, is how big is the protocol and how many users is there? How's the distribution among users of token holders? And then look at here with how much of those users are actually active, because that is also very interesting for this question. And here is an example of myself with Olympus DAO, where I give a bunch of sources and I go into the forum that seems lively. The Discord has thousands of members, and discourse seems to be spread out over more than just 5 people. Votes get between 30 and 60K with about 600K staked. This is not a super high turnout, because only staked can vote. Voting incentives like at Kyber could help. So I also give an example of how it could be done better. So what I also see often in prime ratings is that people, they think like, well, I guess they've done what they could do, highest amount of points given. And I often feel that it's also up to us at prime rating to think about how things could be done better. Like if we give the highest points possible, does it mean that there's just nothing else that could have been done? And I always can come up with things that could have been done. So yeah, perfect scores are probably just rare, but perfect is rare, and that's okay. The next question is on the governance infrastructure. And here we range from little to no infrastructure to having reliable and useful governance infrastructure. So what do I expect to see here? I would like to see, well, basically all the infrastructure that's there. So that could be Discord, Telegram chat, a forum, or Snapshot, or their own kind of infrastructure. There are some of these projects that do, although over time, certain platforms have really taken over. If you would look at like a year ago, Snapshot was not as dominant as it is right now. And here, an example here from Olympus DAO again is where I say the DAO relies on Discord, a forum, but not the typical one. Seems like their own forum website, and Scattershot, a fork of Snapshot, which is interesting since it shows the project is putting time into finding solutions fitting to their own requirements. Now, a bonus is to explore if the governance infrastructure is being used actively. So sometimes people say like, yeah, hey, their forum is there, but it hasn't been used for a year. Well, maybe they moved. That is definitely possible. And has it gone down in the past would also be a bonus, because we're looking at reliable governance infrastructure. So perhaps their Discord has been hacked, or their Telegram has been down, or whatever. See if you can find any of that. That would be a bonus. I would be really interested in it, but obviously that's extra work. Then we are arriving at the last question, the robustness of the process. So that is different. Usually people are a bit like, well, I just mentioned everything. Yeah, but that's the infrastructure. It's not how to use this infrastructure, and that's the big difference here. And some projects really go the extra mile. So the options that we have here are the protocol has no specified governance process to a clear and robust process. And I would say by far the best process documentation that I've ever come across was MakerDAO, which has so much documentation explaining every step of the way of how you can interact with their governance. And I would say they are, they are a great example for the rest of the space. Now, here we have an example rating of how you could be writing a answer. And what I expect in the answer is there documentation, which here they mention that there is a Medium article and there is the forum, but that's the only place to find it. And so, well, they probably could do a bit better there. Are there templates or steps provided? So here they do say that here to address this, a constituency description section was added to the newly formed KIP template. So yeah, they do have a template there. One moment. I have an alarm going off once again here. Well, one moment, guys. That's in a different room, and my wife actually walked away. So let me get this, turn this off. All right, perhaps with that time that I walked away, maybe a question came in. Let's see. Yes. So here, let me see where to start. I've also seen some protocols that community vote on Snapshot, and the vote did not reach quorum. In this situation, the core team will have to vote on the proposal. How does this influence the community voice of the protocol? Well, if it doesn't reach quorum, actually, I guess what you're meaning is that then the team steps in and votes heavily so that it does reach quorum. I assume that that's what you're saying here. Yeah, how does that influence? Well, it means that basically the community either didn't want this to happen, but the team still pushed it through. This is why we have the question on token distributions earlier on in the rating, where we want to see if the community actually is able to have a good balance compared to the team. Because if a team is able to just push through any new proposal, then why would you have governance in the first place? Then also, why is there a need for quorum to be reached, and why is voting not at all about the most voted for? So why do we have quorums? I think I can give an answer there. The reason is that let's say someone gives a new proposal and says, I don't know, give me a whole bunch of tokens, and he votes yes, and everyone else just ignores this guy. Then afterwards, yeah, it passed. He said yes, and then they have to do this, which of course you don't want to happen. So basically, a reason to have a quorum, which means like a certain percentage of the supply should have voted, is to make sure that uninteresting or bad proposals just don't get voted through. And there are a lot of other ways to deal with this. For instance, you could have a little fee for making a proposal, and Keep, as we saw earlier, has that you have to have 1,000 Keep to create one. But for instance, with Terra, I believe you just have to pay some Luna to create a proposal. There are also ways where if your proposal goes through, then you get some tokens. So that's like a incentive structure to make sure that people are making proposals in the first place, because a lot of projects also have an issue with just not having enough proposals coming in. And why is voting not all about who voted most? Well, it still is. It just needs to have a certain bare minimum of engagement from the whole token supply to get through. I hope that answered your question or questions. Thank you, by the way, Michael, for those questions. Here we go. We're going to continue with this last question. So where were we? Are there templates? Yeah, the next one. Is the governance process transparent and open enough for a permissionless protocol? Because perhaps they're not very clear about every step of the way. And we do want people to have the choice to understand what they're doing. And that's here something that Santosh and Maniak also mentioned. The system could be more transparent portrayed. Then a bonus is, are there things that could be done better? Is the language clear? Which is actually something within MakerDAO that has been a point of critique, is that they create new terms for a whole bunch of stuff that they could have just used normal language for. Those are the questions, and now we're going to go through a bunch of tips. So first, I've already mentioned it. I think most of these I've mentioned along the way, but let's hammer them home. Be critical. Look for holes in their structure. You got to look at it. Don't take it just for granted. Look at it and think about the game theory behind it. Like, how can I game this governance structure? And where can you find sources on admin keys and governance? Usually, if the protocol is professional enough, they have very clear explanations on it in their Git book or their documentation. And otherwise, you can always Google like the protocol name with admin key, or control key is also sometimes used, or access control keys. And usually you can find things, but besides that, you can always look at DeFi Safety or the Crypto Wiki or DeFi Watch or Etherscan contracts if you're a real baller. I mean, that would be the best way, because that is really don't trust. Verify yourself. And don't hesitate to contact the team. I think that when it comes to admin keys, teams can be quite standoffish because they feel like you're, well, which you are, like you're not trusting them and you want to know what they can do. But the way I go about this is I usually ask them first some other questions, and then I ask like, by the way, are your contracts upgradable instead of the admin key stuff? And then maybe they say yes. And then you can ask like, oh, okay, so what is the situation there, et cetera, et cetera. If the project is very hesitant to talk to you in Discord and Telegram or wherever it is, well, that's also news to us, you know, just write that down and add screenshots. And you can also in Discord and Telegram on a public message, you can do right-click and then copy link to that chat, so that you have a source as well. And don't hesitate to ask for feedback within the rating channels as well in Discord. Like, we are there as raters, as reviewers, to give you feedback and to give you tips on how to find things. And as I just said, no information found is still information for the report. If you cannot find anything, that is also something. That is something that is very valuable for people who read it, because then they're like, okay, these people, they don't tell us anything. That's interesting. So just write that down. Say, I could not find anything on this, or they told me nothing after asking repeatedly. And the typical mistakes, I've mentioned them already a couple times, so I'm going to go through them a bit more quickly now. No argumentation for scoring. I see this over and over again. If you say, like, well, I can't come up with an example straight away, but if you make the case for something in like one sentence and then base the whole scoring of that, you got to give a little bit more argumentation on why. Too generous of scores. I'm quite famous for wanting lower scores. I'm very critical. Of course, it's up to you, but yeah, we gotta keep these people. We gotta self-regulate basically, and if we don't ask for better and more robust and more transparent practices, then who will? And of course, no or few sources. I really want to see sources because, again, don't trust but verify yourself. So give sources. A multisig does not always cover all parts of the protocol. So also keep that in mind. Look into what the multisig is about. Maybe there are multiple. The most important one for the rating is, of course, a multisig that covers funds of users. No time lock does not mean good reaction time. Remember to think from the user's perspective. And if you find empty infrastructure, perhaps it moved. I saw this recently in a rating where it said, like, yeah, the forum hasn't been used for a year. And I said, well, I think they probably just used something new. Ask them. And then he asked, and it turned out that now they are doing polls on Twitter, which is an interesting way of doing things. But apparently they thought they would get more traction and more interaction that way. Here are a couple of examples. I'm not going to go into it here, but I will share these slides in a second. So then you can look at them later on. And that's it. Ask away, be critical, and go ahead if there are any questions. I'm going to stop the screen sharing so I can actually see them. I don't see any questions straight away right now. I will ask for a moment, but I will wait for a moment. But otherwise, yeah, you can always ask questions within Discord. We are all there, and maybe questions will be way more specific there instead of just right now on these, on this presentation.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rating Pepe. I think we're gonna let this sink in and give people another 30 seconds to a minute to come up with some questions. I'm sure there are some more.
Yeah, and if not, also fine. As I said, we can, of course, always take it to the Discord. I will share the slides right there. I think that's it for today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for creating ratings. I mean, it's awesome that people are doing this together and that we're getting tokens in return as well. I mean, it's a two-way street. But keep on doing that. And if there are any questions, just ask them. We're all there to help out.
And that's a perfect closing. Thank you so much, Pepe. I'm going to share the recording in the Discord as soon as I have it. And as Rating Pepe said, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for having supporting us and doing the ratings. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thank you.